and get started with our webinar on repurposing Selenium for performance tests. This is a really hot topic. We've got a lot of people today, so thank you all for joining us. And this is the agenda. We're going to do some introductions of people we've got around the table on our side. Give a little bit of a platform overview on how the platform works, and then go through some Selenium functional test development to use for functional testing, and then some data-driven performance tests from Selenium. We'll also show you how the designer functionality works within the Appvance platform as well, and then we'll wrap up and have questions, and we'll hopefully get through this quickly so you can all get back to your day. So let's start with introductions. I'm Kevin Surace. I'm CEO of Appvance.
Hi, this is Frank Cohen. I'm the founder of Appvance.
Rajesh Radhakrishnan, Director of Sales Engineering.
Srikar, I'm the Solutions Architect over here.
Okay, so with that, let's get going. We'll just start with this. We always like to start with this, reminding everybody that test is an integral part of the DevOps function. And in fact, even if you're not in CI/CD and the Agile workflow, this is the direction that so many people are going. So test is really crucial, and it's important to make test easy, fast. Fast to create tests, fast to fix tests, and fast to run tests. And that's really the goal of the Appvance platform, which is a unified test automation platform where you can record and or create or write once and then use those use cases throughout a variety of different kinds of tests. And you'll see that today with Selenium and how easy it is to reuse the Selenium scripts that you already have, that you've been writing maybe for years. And this platform can support the entire DevOps life cycle from development through QA environment and staging environments. And what that kind of unified test does for you is it creates rigor throughout the organization without additional effort. Meaning, just today we'll see repurposing of Selenium scripts that you may have already written and used for your functional or regression tests, and reuse those for performance. So what's nice about that is you can build that kind of reuse into your methodology, and that means that at every build, you're not just running functional tests, but you're running functional, performance, load, stress, potentially security, app penetration, and DDoS and browser compatibility. You start to build that kind of rigor in without additional effort because you don't have to rewrite those scripts over and over again. Of course, any great DevOps automated test platform should be darn well integrated into everything that you already use. Appvance clearly is. And sort of last little bit here is Appvance really delivers a lot of technology sort of in one box, so to speak. It's easy scriptless test creation. Even with complex Ajax, HTML5, even thick Java applications, or giant thick applications, as the case may be, and thick Java sites, so Oracle Forms and Fusion and Fuse and these sorts of things. You can test from 1 user to 10 million concurrent users at the UX level, at the protocol level, or in fact, both together. In fact, you can mix and match all different types of tests within one scenario and run them all at the same time. And you can run them from behind your firewall or from the cloud. So you get all of that with this beginning to end testing that engages the client-side code, just like you'll be able to do with Selenium, and we'll show you that. An extremely detailed ability to create simulated users even at the UX level, and you can read all of those step times and wait times and max times and randomized times and IP spoofing and these sorts of things, including data driving all of these scripts. And regardless of what kind of script you've ever written in or like to write in, if you want to write in Java, great. If you like to write in Python, great. If you like Selenium, Selenium RC, WebDriver, great. Python, Groovy, SOAP UI, you name it. Basically, this platform has already built that in and can already run those tests in conjunction with other tests. So you can use your existing scripts and expertise. You can even export some of the designer scripts into common languages like Selenium. And developers can choose to code, or you can skip coding with our designer capability. And our designer capability can design scripts easily and quickly at the UX level, or you can design scripts, essentially record scripts, even at the API level in HAR. So this is a very powerful platform, but we fully support all of these open source protocols as well. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Frank, and he'll take over from here.
Thank you, Kevin. I appreciate the introduction. So The thing that we're going to be talking most about in today's webinar is about using Selenium itself to create these tests. Now, the thing about Selenium is that it was originally intended as a set of tools and also an API. So you have a set of tools like Selenium Core, Selenium Remote Control, Selenium Grid. These are all part of the Selenium 1.0 product. And it implemented the Selenium domain-specific language. They even called it Selenese. As an API, you could access a method that would tell a browser, open this application. And then you could also access any of the other Selenium commands to say, like, click on this button, type this value into this text field, basically to drive the app. When Selenium 2 came about, really the focus was away from the tooling and then onto the APIs. The Selenium project team basically said, hey, we're now going to make it the responsibility of the browser vendors to be responsible for implementing the Selenium API. And then companies like Appvance would be the tooling company to provide the implementation of those Selenium APIs in a test environment. So a lot of the initial stuff that you would get from Selenium 1, like this core and RC and grid, that is already provided by the Appvance Performance Cloud product. And Appvance Performance Cloud fully implements both Selenium and Selenium 2, also known as WebDriver. The thing to notice about all of this is that Selenium was really created to do functional testing. That is, we wanted to just make sure that the app would come up and would run according to a very specific workflow. None of this was created for load testing or for any of the parts of load testing like performance and that sort of thing. So, if you ask yourself a basic question about, well, can Selenium itself be used for performance testing, then I would tell you yes. And Appvance has been here with 13 years of experience delivering performance test technology, and then since the Selenium 1.0 days, we've been delivering to you a very usable, rich solution. If you ask yourself, well, am I ready to test using Selenium? Selenium itself drives the app by bringing up the browser, so you need an environment that can bring up a browser and be able to run it multiple times and concurrently, and that's exactly what Appvance Performance Cloud does for you. There's no need for any of the old Selenium 1.0 technologies because Appvance provides them for you. For example, reports and results analysis, that's built in. Deploying these Selenium tests to a cloud or grid environment, that's built in. If you wanted to run your functional tests but do it concurrently, like you had enough functional tests now where you couldn't run it overnight, well, Appvance can run these Selenium scripts functionally in parallel, and that's a huge advantage. And then a lot of times Selenium scripts need to be mixed in with other types of tests. So like it might be a portion of your app uses, say, applets, or it might use the Oracle Forms technology. That capability is built into Appvance as well. So the basic architecture of the Appvance Performance Cloud is built around a service architecture. You have a complete integration with any of the kind of DevOps type of services that you'd expect to be using. For continuous integration, that might be Jenkins or some other continuous integration environment. For a repository, it might be GitHub or some other source code repository. All of those are easily integrated by using the Appvance Performance Cloud because it provides you with a very simple console which then executes the Selenium scripts in one or more test injectors. And the really cool thing about this environment is that it's taken all the complexity away from you in that if you needed to deploy a Selenium script to, say, 100 different Amazon Web Service cloud machines, then Appvance already does that. The cloud technology is already built into Appvance. So the other thing to note is that the Appvance Performance Cloud makes it very easy to repurpose these tests from one type of test to another. So you have like the ability to start as a functional test and then easily say in Appvance, hey, let's repurpose this to be a performance test or a load test or a stress test. You could even do security testing using it at levels of load that aren't possible using any of the other products that are out there and available to you. So there's some things that you should know about using Selenium, especially with modern applications. Just about all of the apps that I use today on from my office have some sort of Ajax component to them. or maybe have some sort of native component to them. And the original Selenium 1 wasn't really meant for Ajax in that you could you could execute a command in Selenium like click and wait, and that would tell the Selenium script to click on a button and then wait until that button's function was completed. But in an Ajax environment, everything is asynchronous, so it just didn't really make sense. And that was one of the reasons that Appvance decided to come up with its own record and playback environment called the Appvance Designer. So when you're working with Selenium scripts, what we'd recommend is that you take an event handling approach to the test scripts that you're writing. A lot of the other tools that you might have used in the past will take a look at how long the interval is between you clicking on a button, and then it'll record the test that way. So, if you took 10 seconds, then it's going to wait 10 seconds before it clicks the next button. That approach just does not work in the Ajax environment. Instead of timing-oriented scripts, you really need to make these to be event-oriented scripts. So the script that you're going to write in Selenium not only is going to click on something, it's then going to pull the browser through the Selenium APIs to see that that it's time for the next Selenium operation to be executed.
We're moving to it.
The other thing to realize is that when you're in Ajax environments, the Ajax is updating the screen dynamically, or it's updating the interface dynamically. So if your tool depends on element IDs, chances are that isn't going to work in an Ajax environment. You'll need something that's much more dynamic, like the Appvance version of Selenium in the designer. This also handles things like dynamic values, like if you had a login feature to an app that you needed to test. Chances are, for the security of the app, the ID values are going to change each time that app displays the login page. So being able to overcome issues like that are easy with the Appvance Designer and really difficult if you're just going to code using the Selenium APIs by yourself. So I mentioned before that it's really easy for the Appvance Performance Cloud product to repurpose a functional test to be a load test. And the way we do that is illustrated on this screen. So for functional testing, let's say you started a test, it had a simple setup method. Setup might be doing a database call to gather some login IDs and passwords. And then that's followed immediately by a run test method. Run test would say okay, let's order some product. And then you might have a second run test, which was set the ship date for that product you just ordered. And then finally, just to be good citizens, we're going to tear down this test by maybe cleaning up the database of used names or cleaning up that product order that we had. And that's simple for functional testing. The way that Appvance turns that functional test into a load test is by creating individual threads, one thread for each virtual user. So if I wanted to test 2 virtual users running this app concurrently, I tell Appvance, hey, I want 2 virtual users, and now it would run the setup method of that functional test, then the order product, then the set ship date portion of the test, and then the teardown, and then it would repeat that functional test over and over again for the set amount of time for my test. So if I told it, hey, run 2 users at 5 minutes, then I would be able to see, well, how many times was my test able to get through its workflow from that functional test listing. And then I can count to see, was there some variation in the throughput of the app as I added more virtual users? That's basic performance testing. In the case of Appvance Performance Cloud, it goes even further in that you can repurpose this functional test to be a business service monitor. So, we've always believed in DevOps and in continuous integration here. DevOps is missing something critical that Appvance delivers, which is the ability to repurpose a functional test to also be a business service monitor. So if you're using DevOps to do automatic deployment, automatic configuration, automatic integration, then Appvance Performance Cloud just becomes an extension of your DevOps environment to be able to go back and serve and monitor those services that you have up and running through your DevOps integration. And then the other thing to keep in mind is that normally tests aren't written homogenously. There's no one single test script, and if there is, I'd recommend you break it down in individual components. And so when you're working with a developer team and a test team and a DevOps team, chances are they'll have a whole bunch of different preferences for what tools and scripts and languages they want to use. So this is just a quick example of the script runners that are built into the Appvance Performance Cloud. So if you're happy using Selenium 1, then great, Appvance supports it. If you want to use WebDriver APIs, the Selenium 2, then great, it's supported. If you want to use the HTTP archive, or HAR for short, then that's fully supported. Google kicked off the industry support of HAR by doing page load optimization. They wanted to know, like, the Google search page was going to come up, in less than a second. And so what Appvance did is repurpose those HAR scripts, which basically identify all of the HTTP level traffic that's happening at the browser level. We wanted to repurpose that into a functional test or a performance test. So using, say, the Google Chrome browser, you can create a HAR file by just bringing up your page, telling Appvance, here's the resulting HAR file, and Appvance now runs it as a performance test. It's really easy. What we do recommend is taking a component approach to your scripts. If you ever wound up looking at a test script that has like 2 or 3 or 4 pages of lines to it, then I would put it to you that it probably makes sense to refactor that test down into kind of bite-sized components. For example, if all of your tests all have, say, 10 or 15 steps to the test that handle the login to the app, it makes sense to break that login into its own component, treat it like a piece of software, have that component be able to deal with the login portion of your app, and then stitch that together into a functional test so that maybe login is the first step of the test, product search is the second step, ordering the product is the third step, and I think you get the idea. The interesting thing about Appvance is that it comes with its own data production library technology, so that when you're configuring that test use case, you just have to identify the data source that you want for that test. So if you're in development phase and you want to use development data, then great, create a development database, like an instance of MySQL that has your login information for the development system. Appvance will take care of all of the complexity of gluing that development database into the test use case and actually use that test data live when it's driving the app. So I mentioned before that we weren't really satisfied with what the Selenium project team was able to create for record and playback capability. And so that was the reason that Appvance created its own Appvance Object Designer. You could think of this as a replacement for Selenium IDE. It provides you with the record and playback capability, so you're just pointing and clicking through your app, and the designer is going to create the Selenium script for you. It does it by creating first a designer script, which is a full language unto itself, and then if you'd like to export that into Selenium or WebDriver, then great, it does that for you. The designer not only works within Firefox like Selenium IDE does, but it also works in IE and Chrome and Safari and Opera. Really, there hasn't been a browser that we haven't seen that the designer doesn't work with. We also know that most of the time you're going to be testing Ajax-based applications, and so the designer has full automatic handling of Ajax asynchronous nature. So all you're doing is recording the clicks and the typing and maybe the opening of windows, and the designer is going to fill in all of the business logic of the test to make sure that the test is running in full synchronization with your app. Making these tests, these Selenium scripts in the designer data-driven is as easy as just drag and drop. It's very simple. And like I said, you can export into Selenium, Flex, and a whole bunch of other different formats. So I'd like to introduce Rajesh now, who's going to take us through a demonstration of what I've been talking about.
Thank you, Frank. This is Rajesh here. So I'm going to do a demonstration of how to use Selenium as performance tests in Appvance. So everybody should be able to see my desktop. So what you're seeing on the screen is a open source application, a CRM application known as fat-free application, fat-free CRM. And I've installed the Selenium IDE, and it's pointing to the application. And as I interact with the application, you're going to see it record. This is nothing new. This is just the Selenium IDE that I installed from the website. So I'm going to interact with the application, and it's going to record. I'm just going to interact with the application. Oops, I need to click on record first. So I'm just interacting with the application. Entering information that I want to record. And so what I want to show you is that, yeah, the IDE records all the interactions. Now, this is what some of our customers are doing for the application. The IDE is not as well used, and people are using the WebDriver APIs to drive the application. But there are some customers who do use the IDE, and it serves their purpose. So, and they run using the replay using the IDE. But what we are going to use the IDE today for is to export a WebDriver example. So in the IDE, you can say Java JUnit for WebDriver, and you can save your Selenium script as a Java script. And I've done that. I've saved as factory CRM recording.java. And what you can do is go to Eclipse, create a project, and in the project, you can see that the Java code basically captures all the actions. And I'm just going to run it as a JUnit test. To show you that the code compiles, it'll pull up the browser, and it's executing a script that I recorded and brought it down. Now, what you could do is, in Eclipse, you could say export and export it to a jar file. So in my example, I've exported to a jar file known as Selenium UX test run. Now, what we're going to do is we're actually going to go to Appvance. So the Appvance platform has a very straightforward methodology. You record your UX script, which you've done outside. Next, you record your functional test, which you've also done outside, and be able to execute it, play it, analyze the results, repurpose that functional test as a performance test, play it, and analyze it. So what we're going to go for is, since we're not using the object designer, we use Selenium, we can go straight to the scenario builder where you would author the running of the functional test. So the scenario builder has these sections. You can give it a name here in the general section. The test type here is functional test. Test management is for good bookkeeping practices. The test case section is the most important section. So here you have many different test types. For this test that we have from Selenium, we exported to Java, we call this a Java test. But you could have different types of test types here. You can add, as you can see, the additional tests that you've added here, they all should be run in sequence. For any functional test that you want to be running in parallel functional tests, you can click on this Add Test Case button. Add test case, and all of these will be in yellow boxes, will be run in parallel, and you can do that for functional test cases also. So going back to our authoring our basic test case that we got from Selenium, I've pointed to the jar file that was created. I've created to the class that is the main class. The method and the Selenium tests, when they export to WebDriver, they have these basic methods: set up, run the actual test, and then the teardown part. So you have 3 of these will be running in sequence. They all run under the same instance by giving it an instance tag. We're running this on localhost, so you can actually see the browser pop up and run the test. In our performance test, we will actually be running it on test nodes. Monitors is if I were to be if I have any application monitors or APC monitors which would monitor the servers, that's where this section would be filled. I'm not doing that for this demonstration. These are all the software that we already are shipping with, and it tells you what are the additional files that we're using for this test case. All of these options are primarily for performance, integrating with other tools, and authentication schemes, all of that. The notification section is to tell the test administrator how often this test is running and to keep the statistics. So I'm going to kick off this run by pressing the play button. So this is the controller window. It's provisioning this test node, which in this case is the same machine, making sure the files exist, and it's going to kick off the test. So while it's kicking off the test, you can pretty much see that in the scenario builder, all we did was specify the methods that are going to be used, specify the class, and specify the jar file. So here you can see that the application is actually running from the jar file. And here now it's collecting the results. So we have a very nice way of showing you all of the additional elements that were downloaded because of the steps that we had in our test script. Right? This is a very, very valuable piece of information. So in our dashboard, we have the requests and responses of all the resources that were downloaded. Right? Requests and responses. Now, what we've shown to you right now is you can take a jar file of your Selenium WebDriver test and run it in Appvance and see all these details thoroughly. Now, it's fine that you can create a hard-coded test in terms of the values that were entered. Now, what I would like to show you next is to be able to create a data-driven functional test. So for that, let me go back to my ID recorder. I'm going to go back to my application. I'm going to create a template script. What do I mean by a template script? I'm going to record a initial script that just goes through the contacts, basically a use case where I'm cycling through a set of data. I'll stop it here, and to give you an example, maybe I'll go a couple of more. Right? I'm just clicking on names and going through the list of contacts, and as you can see here, I have this James and Price, and there are other ways it recorded it. I couldn't find the actual link, so it recorded it. Now what I can do is, I see this pattern emerging, right? I have the contact name, and then there's this active button that I clicked. So what I can do now is, and go here, and specify a template. I can go here, contact. All right, actually here. So I'm just trying to create a pattern here so here what what we want to see is to be able to create a repeatable pattern. So for this, I can just come here. It's a bit involved, so that's where the data driving part is so essential. I have created a data.csv file which has the link of all the contacts that I'm interested in. And all I need to do is come here and say ACC. And this script is not replayable in the IDE, but when I save this script in Celanese, and I could data drive this script with this CSV file in Appvance, and I'm going to show you that. So I created an extended script file, and I've created an extended script where I can show you how the data driving is done. So I created this data-driven.html, which follows the same template. And here I've specified which is the CSV file that I'm using, which is this CSV file. Right? And in the test type, I still say functional test, but I say repeat it 7 times for the 7 rows in my CSV file. And in the test case, I'm saying get next row of data. I'm going to click on the play button. So again, the controller is up. It's going to execute my test. Now, if I had additional data-driven tests, which are again testing the application and can handle it, I would add them as parallel functional tests. So we're waiting for the test to execute. So here we will see the rows being cycled through. And we're done. And as it cycled through each row in the CSV file, now if you wanted to add more rows in the CSV file, you just place a comma here and add the next field. That's how you'd extend the additional columns in your CSV file. If you had an Excel file, you can easily export. You have a database, you can easily export to CSV, and we take in all of that. So all of these individual steps, these are all the transaction times that you got for all the rows in your CSV file. And we've seen that in some applications, some users, some data points actually create different timings. And these are UX level timings, by the way, actual times. So you're seeing the dashboard. All of these times. Now, you've seen a functional test being run as a WebDriver app, a jar file. You've seen a data-driven Celanese test, how you can really save time on testing different rows in the CSV file, really testing out the functionality. Now, what we would like to do is take the same data-driven Celanese script and run a performance test with it. Now, you could do the same thing with a WebDriver jar file. It's not a problem, but it's just easier to show for demonstration purposes. This is what we had done for performance test. So again, we're going back to the scenario builder for this performance test. I've said performance test, iteration name perf. I've said 25 concurrent users. The application that I have set up, the factory CRM, the server, is not designed. It's a QA QA server, so it's not really that powerful. It's probably going to fall over, but that's what we want to see. That's the tester's life, to be able to see what issues are happening and really leveraging this platform to fix those issues. So you're going to see some failures. The failures will happen faster than the successes. And in my test case, you will see this additional tab on top for the performance test. I'm saying you have 25 concurrent users. Inside here, you can select where you want to move the spreading of the users across the test nodes, or you can uncheck it and let the platform decide. For each of the performance tests, you can specify fine-grained control over the user delay behavior, and this think time is more for the object designer. If you want to make it more, again, user delay, and you can automate all of that. Everything else is the same. Right? In the locations field, I've added test nodes, so the test will be launched there. You will not see any browsers pop up for this test. So let's go ahead and kick off the performance test. The performance test takes a little longer.
Now, what's happening here, Rajesh? We're launching a few test nodes out in the cloud?
Yes. Amazon Cloud, to be more precise.
And that's automatically built into the platform?
Yes.
So this is happening kind of behind the scenes, and it'll tear them down when it's done?
Yes.
Great.
And, even though I've set 25 to kind of keep the test run very quick, we can show you quickly the dashboard that you would see for a performance test. So you're seeing the iteration reports, which will be coming up live. You have the execution reports that will be coming up live. And one of the things that some of our customers really like is the scalability index. So we can start with like 50 users and keep ramping up to 50, 100, pause a test, restart. All of those features are available to you. So you can really track down at what point in time the performance of your application starts to go down. And it's not like a hard-coded results. You can use this dashboard to really observe at runtime what's happening. So you can see the active user count being ramped up. So they're all launching actual Firefox browsers on the test nodes. Those are Linux machines. And so the controller goes in and it periodically polls the test nodes and sees what the state of the results are. If there's any failures, they'll be reported here. So it takes some time. So it gives me a chance to kind of go back to understanding what we've seen so far. So from the very start, we looked at how we can take a WebDriver test and run it as a functional test very easily in our platform. You can take a Celanese test if you have, there are some people who would swear never to use Celanese, but there are some people that it fits their use case. And we've extended that, saying, yeah, anything is fine. We can run the platform.
Any versions of Selenium, I think, are fully supported, right?
Yes.
From the very beginning all the way to the very latest, anything that anyone's written in is fully supported.
Yes. So the tests are running, and now we do expect some failures to happen because the QA site is not set up to handle parallel load. It's on a very small server, which is not uncommon, but that is exactly what you're trying to see here.
Well, and you purposely set it up that way so that we would see failures running if we put that on a larger server or with load balancers, we wouldn't see these kind of failures. But I think it's important when we're demonstrating performance testing to dig into the failures, because that's what you're looking for, is something that timed out or something that was well beyond the performance SLAs that you've set in your organization.
Right, and we're stressing that it's not hard to do this performance test on a regular basis.
Now we could have done this against the regular website, put 10 million people on it, and killed the website.
Yeah, that is true.
But we're not supposed to do that, are we?
We're not supposed to run it on the production.
Certainly not for a webinar, and not when we're recording it.
No, I don't want hate mail from our...
Oh, I think the people on the webinar would find it quite interesting. I just don't think the people who own the site would find it interesting.
So the reasons you saw the failures first is because the UX script, if it fails in the second or third step, it fails immediately, so you get that response. And if it's a success, it has to execute all the steps in the UX case, and that's why it's taking a little longer for those successes to be reported.
So that's live data coming in. We're watching the test run, and there's a variety of other live data we could pull. And can you scroll down just a little bit? See the other graphs there? Okay.
Yeah. So you have the hits counts, the milliseconds. We can go through the execution reports.
Rajesh, you might want to make that screen bigger.
So this one?
More real
Yeah.
estate,
Yeah. Thank you. All right. So the scalability index comes more into play when you're doing that calibration testing and you're going through different set of user counts. That makes it more realistic. So we have, pretty much like a tester's life. You have certain number of successes and, almost 50% failures. So now we want to dig in saying, what happened? And this is why we are having a performance test system for. Functionally, it all worked fine, but, when we ran the performance test, not so great numbers. So in the dashboard itself, you can see some of the failures and see like where did it fail, what happened. And so any one of the steps went beyond the default timeout limit that we had set in Appvance. You can change that if you want to, but this is just the default number. Now you can always go to the reports. And the reports, what you're seeing is you have the full functional report here. You're seeing the errors that were failing. Scalability report is when you're really doing.
Well, we didn't do a scalability test.
We didn't do a scalability test.
We'd have to do 3 or 4 ramp ups so that we could see those ramp up, and then we'd see the different level of transactions per second. That is the different amount that each can handle, and if they were linear or not linear, we would see that. And you could set up the Appvance platform to do that automatically for you. Run 10 users, then 100, then 1,000, something like that, and take a look at that scalability. Is that correct?
Yes, and you have the detailed information for each of the test nodes. These were Linux machines in my Amazon cloud. So all of the failures are highlighted as in brown color, and you have all the statistics overlaid on those test executions. We have a lot of testers in the audience, so I want to show how you can see the failure report. It's a HTML file. Some of our customers wanted a HTML file that they could integrate, and as you can see, it says how many times certain timeouts happen and which step. All of these are referencing to the script, so you can go back and debug which step failed.
Now we can also look at the transaction performance times of each of these steps, right?
Yes. So for that, we go to the iteration summary, and we generate a CSV file which you can open in Excel. The default times that are reported here for each of the steps are sorry, I clicked on the wrong test report. Iteration summary. I had multiple dashboards. So here, all of these times by default are in seconds, and we're getting for each of these steps.
So we get the average, we get the 85, 90, 95 percentile response rates as well.
Yes, and just to quickly show you, these are just the default reports and the default seconds. If you want to drill down and you have a really top-notch site, and it gives you millisecond response, you can create a millisecond type.
You can actually create any number of custom reports.
Any number of custom record, mix and match. This one, I just created one that says, what, I want the timings
Sure.
in milliseconds, and we show that.
And so you can see some of those. Actually, some of the response rates on some of these transactions are quite long.
Huge, yeah.
Almost no matter what. For the average, the 85, 90, 95 percentile are not particularly good. Of course, it's not a great app, and it's on the smallest server you could put it on specifically for this reason. But,
it's a QA.
It gives great demo.
Yeah, I mean, it's a QA site, and that's where how the applications are built.
Exactly.
Now, I want to quickly contrast that to what kind of detailed statistics you would get if you were to use the object designer to record a UX level script the object designer quickly looks, very simple. It's an IDE, and you click on Start Recording. It pops up browser, said which browser do you want to record, and you interact with the application. Now, the report that you would get from the object designer has far more details because as Frank said, we've gone through a lot of iterations in trying to come up with more information during a performance run. So here, we took a sample HTML5, modern HTML5 application, and the kind of information you need has to have a lot of details. So the kind of reports that we generate, right, this is an airplane's website, a modern website, and these are the kind of information that you're getting that can help you do that root cause analysis. And you can see, right, the commercial application is much faster, but even there you can easily find out some of the points that they could definitely improve on. And this is the kind of detail that we're giving you with our UX level scripting and the performance tests that you could run with the UX level scripting that we have, the designer technology.
Why don't we move on to close and open up for questions in just a second here. If
Yes.
you want to send your questions, go ahead and type them into the Q&A window, and we'll bring that up very shortly. And let's go back to these closing comments here. Let's go back to the closing comments.
So this is Frank Cohen again. What we've shown you is an Appvance Performance Cloud environment that makes it pretty easy for you to create your own Selenium-based scripts. And what we'd recommend is to follow a couple of best practices that we've developed with our customers over the years. The first one is to build the tests themselves as components and to treat your tests as though they're software. Use the source code repository, check them in, version control them, and that allows you then to benefit from having multiple team members involved with the test maintenance and the test script development, including your developers, testers, DevOps folks, and anybody else that wants to get involved. It becomes much easier to maintain these components over time. And because these are components, it's going to be much more resilient to keep on running these tests, even though the application will be changing under it. For example, if you had a component that did login, then you'd have one login component. If you change the login within the app, you just have to change one login component and all of your tests would pick it up. The other thing we recommend highly is to take a JUnit style approach to building these tests. So JUnit implements a very simple set of methods: set up, run, and tear down. And so we'd recommend you do the same thing with your test components. And then lastly, what we'd recommend are some kind of do's and don'ts. On the do side, do approach your tests from a component perspective. Build them as though you're going to have to maintain them over time. We recommend that you, depending on the skill set of your testers, either record the test scripts or write the scripts from scratch and write them in a high-level language or an object-oriented language. Don't be afraid to mix and match between those. So if you've got some testers that are really happy with scripting, then great. Provide them with the Appvance Performance Cloud environment and let them also interact with components that were written by testers that are happier with record and playback. We definitely do recommend that you use dynamic locators, especially for Ajax applications that your Selenium scripts are going to be executing. So if you see, for example, an element ID and you code that into your test, what we'd recommend instead is to use the dynamic locators that come with Appvance Performance Cloud instead of just using, say, an XPath expression, which will tend to break over time. We also do recommend that you work with your developers and your DevOps folks because they might already have a set of functional tests that they've created on their own to do unit testing of their apps. And with Appvance Performance Cloud, it's very easy to repurpose those unit tests to be functional tests, performance tests, or anything else we run. The last do is do expect that the tests themselves need to be event-oriented instead of adding pause commands or wait commands, to wait for a certain amount of time to expire. you really should be writing your tests in a way that the test pulls the app to see when it's the next time to run.
Well, that's great. I'll just give the quick summary of Appvance, and then we'll get right to your questions here. Appvance was started to really rethink how automated testing works in a dramatic way. I think you saw one of those, I think 50 or 60 or 70 different items today, which is the reuse of your existing scripts that you wrote for functional browser automation, and you can now use them for performance tests right at the UX level, and that's a really great thing. The second is to really use that technology to improve your productivity and move away from these siloed tools and scripts that we focused on for 20 years or so in the industry, where you write often the same use case 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 different times for different kinds of tests, which doesn't seem to make a lot of sense. So we're trying to eliminate all of that work for you. So, okay, let's bring up the Q&A right now. You can also email us at any time at sales@appvance.com. Okay, we have a number of questions. Let's go through them. The first question is, "Hi, I missed the very beginning. Can you repeat everything?" No, but you will be able to see this on our YouTube channel, and we'll send an update out to everybody about that. Let's see. What is the tool where all the tests are managed?
We're using Appvance Performance Cloud here, which is an entirely cloud-hosted test platform. Everything that you've seen is being executed or accessed through a web browser. Managing your tests are very easy at a high level. You can use the Appvance Performance Cloud. And then if you wanted to break down your tests into components and store them in a repository like GitHub or Subversion or any of the other source code repositories, that's the way you get down to the code level management of it.
And I should add, this can be essentially installed behind your firewall. It still works as a cloud environment behind your firewall, so you can test applications from behind the firewall when needed, or it can work out in the public cloud, Amazon SoftLayer, etc., or mix and match between the two.
That's true. So it's an entirely service-oriented architecture.
Exactly. And then let's see. Will I be able to get a recording of the webinar? Yes, you will. Is security in the cloud platform? So there's some things that we've shown on here that aren't fully available yet. That will be available soon. So you're seeing some of those. We won't talk too much about them today, but you can imagine a real continuing of the effort to allow you to use the scripts that you want, to allow you to use the kind of recording technology that you want, and be able to get all of your tests driven from the knowledge of those use cases.
In case they're asking about security of the Appvance Performance Cloud itself, if it was running in a cloud environment like AWS, you're making HTTPS connections to those cloud-based servers. So we protect at the protocol level. And then the communication between the console of Appvance and those test nodes that we're actually executing the test, those are protected over SSL connections as well.
Another question, can I use Selenium WebDriver as well as Celanese and the other side? Yes, the answer is, I think we mentioned that.
So we support both Selenium 1 as well as Selenium 2, which is otherwise known as WebDriver.
So really any version of Selenium. How is this priced? The Appvance platform, depending on whether it's in the cloud or behind your firewall, is typically priced on an annual subscription or an annual license. Again, just email us at sales@appvance.com and someone would be happy to get back to you. I think that's the last question that I see, unless something else comes in. We've got one more question. Look at that. Hang on, let me push it down there. How to use SOAP UI test scripts. We didn't show that today, but in fact, the platform fully supports SOAP UI and JMeter and Java and Python and Jython and everything else.
In the case of SOAP UI, you use SOAP UI to create a SOAP UI work file, which is an XML formatted file. And then in the Appvance test scenario builder, which Rajesh demonstrated, SOAP UI is just one of the options that you'd say, instead of running a Selenium script, this is going to be a SOAP UI script. And it executes it just as though SOAP UI was completely built into Appvance, which it is.
And then I see one other question here. Are we able to run this on a Mac? Well, the answer is that yes, but typically the platform itself resides on a server and then you access it via a browser. And that browser can be on a Mac on a Windows machine, on a Linux machine, really on anything that you have practically.
Yeah. So this is Frank again, the founder of the company. I used to only walk around with my Mac laptop, and I'd run the whole environment from there. Appvance Performance Cloud is still 100% Java application, and it runs quite nicely on a variety of different platforms.
And I just want to make sure we're going to check one more time if we've got any further QA here. Hang on just a second. Okay.
Same question.
That's it. Yep,
Yeah.
there's same question about the Mac. Okay, so yes, you can run this on any environment and you can access it from any environment. Okay, thank you very much, everybody. Really appreciate your time today. We're going to get you out here under the hour. And again, any further questions, sales@appvance.com, or questions about pricing, or if you'd like to see a custom live demo. Thanks much, and we'll see you on the next webinar. Bye-bye.